and welcome to More Than Footy, your official Sydney Swans podcast brought to you by Bing Lee. I'm Tom Chadwick.
I'm Caitlin Scolari. Chatty, big night on Friday night.
Yeah, great win over Carlton, wasn't it?
Massive win.
And a great, occasion for the Indigenous community here in Australia with the start of Sir Doug Nichols round and Marn Grook at the SCG. Did you enjoy it?
I love Marn Grook round. It's probably my favourite round.
What was your highlight of the pre-game in particular?
I was on field with the Go Foundation, so being on field, being in the thick of the ceremony was very cool. Really enjoyed that. I think our events team and the SCG do a great job of celebrating culture.
Yeah, it's a great spectacle, isn't it? Speaking of a great job, we thought we'd bring in Jared Hodges, who is the leader of our First Nations strategy here at the Sydney Swans, which is, of course, a huge element of our club. Jared, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thanks, Chatty. Thanks, Caitlin. It's great to be here.
Mate, just tell us about your job at the Sydney Swans and what it entails.
Yeah, it's when I started back in 2022, it was a bit of a blank canvas, to be honest. Obviously, post other stuff within the game, the AFL has mandated that all clubs have a First Nations player development manager. But here at the club, they wanted a little bit more, and so from that, it's included our strategy. So what that means, I'll probably break it down into three real key areas. It's the cultural governance of our club. So it's how we, across our whole organisation, through our departments, how we embrace and work with First Nations people and communities, and everyone plays a role in that in our organisation. Then there's an engagement part, which obviously heavily involved with community, also setting up our First Nations Academy, which has become a real pillar of our organisation, and we're getting some really meaningful outcomes both on and off the field there. And then it's day-to-day working with our players. So I was fortunate in my first 3 years to work with Bud and build a relationship there.
You're still recovering from that one?
No. It's funny you say, because we just had a conversation earlier this morning. So it's working with Bud, but it's also working with our 18 other past players, and so we've built a really strong little community there, a little WhatsApp group, and everyone's engaged and connected to the club, and that's brought a lot of joy for some of those players who mightn't have had a great experience or a great ending as it happens in a footballer's career. So to have all those guys connected and to see what it means to them is pretty positive, pretty good.
And last week, within your role, you organised for the whole of club to go out to the NCIE. Can you tell us what entailed the program?
Yeah, it's an important week, but that's an important part of the strategy is providing that safe gateway, I guess, for non-Indigenous people to connect with our community and our culture. Redfern's entrenched in this nation's history, really. So many great things have come out of Redfern. Things like it was the start of Aboriginal medical services. So Redfern had the first AMS, and they celebrate 53 years this year. Aboriginal housing spun out of Redfern, and they celebrate 51 years. So that community is, I guess, a real pillar. Things like the late Uncle Charlie Perkins came to Sydney, studied in Sydney, and it was from Redfern that the freedom rides and many other things in this nation that around inequality has come from. So really important for our club and our people in our club to get into Redfern and I guess meet some of the community there. Also, such a great venue that at the National Indigenous Centre of Excellence. So it was a cracking day. The players were there all day doing football, and then the rest of our organisation come across. It was the first time. I think it's the first time in our history that we've had men's, women's, all staff all together. It was.
It's unreal.
What's your favourite part about that day? We just for those that are listening and watching, we went there as an entire club. We were essentially split up into 4 groups. We did some Indigenous dancing. We did a cultural session where we were taught how to make fire from scratch. When you watch on, because you would have no doubt hosted a lot of those sessions, what do you get the most joy out of seeing non-Indigenous people learning about your culture?
Well, there's 2 parts. I think there's the part for us as First Nations people, and Uncle Shane Phillips, who's the CEO of Tribal Warrior, and has really is a pivotal leader within the community. In his session, he spoke, and I think this statement will stay with me for a long time, but it was along the lines of, we see you and we hold the Sydney Swans in high regard, and by us being there, we acknowledge now that as a club that you see us. And I think that's really, really powerful, that our people are feeling via our actions as a club, are feeling part of our club and valued. So I think there's that. And in going around to the various groups and just seeing how it brings our whole organisation together. So men's, women's, the Go Foundation, our commercial corporate staff, communications team, everyone's just in there, and there's just different smiles, different conversations, which we don't always get because often our departments are quite, I guess, busy and outside of our dining area where you get to knock about with each other. It just created that space outside, and some people were a little bit unhinged and got right into it, but it was fun.
What was your favourite part of the day?
I liked fire making.
Yeah,
I got the fire going for our group.
Did
so
you?
I was very chuffed with myself.
I was terrible.
I didn't mind the dancing.
I blamed the fact that the straw was a bit damp, but I'm not sure if I could because one of the hosts came in and did it straight away.
We even did it without one of the hosts there with us, so we were great. Shout out Braden Campbell.
BJ?
Yeah.
Okay. It was probably from his time up in Marn Grook, which we're going to get to.
Yeah, it was funny, the fire making. I was having a conversation with Tom, and there was a group that was struggling, and so we leaned over to the W girls who had already lit fire, and we said, girls, get in there and coach. And Tom said, well, hang on, they are our coaches that were actually trying to light fire and we're struggling. So it was great seeing Macca and Mont really struggling and to get it going, but they showed the perseverance to get it happening.
Jared, as we mentioned off the top, we've got a double weekend of Sir Doug Nichols round. Fantastic spectacle on Friday night pre-game. We take on Melbourne on Sunday this weekend for the second weekend. What brings you the most joy out of Sir Doug Nichols round? I know we've got a lot to work on, a lot to do in this space, but what do you find so memorable about it?
This year, we were fortunate to have a contingent of leaders from Menangrita, so our work with Menangrita is ongoing, and I guess that's probably what I'm most proud of, is how we're moving away from those transactional relationships probably of the past where, we've got Sir Doug Nichols, let's just get a welcome, let's get a performance, but the people we engage now, we have genuine relationships with them, and they feel connected and part of our club. So that's what really, I guess, really makes me smile, is seeing our guests, local, whether it be from Redfern, from Lapa in particular, our two most closest communities, but then with Menangrita, and seeing staff like both yourselves and Chatty, you got to have a yarn with some of the gang from Menangrita from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was great.
And that meant a lot. That meant a lot to those people, and they just walked away going, "This is genuine."
Yeah.
You keep mentioning Menangrita, but maybe you can give a brief overview of the trip last year.
Yeah, so we were able to, under the Tackling Indigenous Smoking health banner from the federal government, we're able to secure some money to make it a long-term commitment. So we've got a commitment for 3 years of where we'll take our organisation into Menangrita for a week, where we'll do a lot of health activations and work with the local Aboriginal corporations and in particular Malala Health, the health service there that do a fantastic job to really spread an important message that around tobacco. We know cardiovascular disease is a huge killer amongst all Australians, but in particular our First People, and smoking and vaping is a huge risk factor in that. So Menangrita's, it's a rich and beautiful place, but there's some underlying health issues. They've got the highest incidence of rheumatic heart disease in the world, and over 50% of that community and through that West Arnhem region smoke. So if we can use our platform working with community to make a difference there, And if we can just save one person and prolong one person's life, it's a great thing.
I dare say it's a generational change. It's not going to happen overnight. But since we went in that first year and we went with Bud, that was an experience taking Bud up to Arnhem Land. He was like the Pied Piper. Have you seen any positive changes in the 3 years that the Swans have been up there?
Yeah, 100%. And it's, in the time that I've been up there myself physically, but then it's also just listening to, to the people who do it day in, day out. So the week we were there, I think we had 2 incidences of smoking, and that was it. Wow. It was just so minuscule. So clearly our health promotion campaign and work in the community is meaningful and is working. But then long-term stuff, the chairman, Charlie, he's a heavy smoker, but again, he's changing his habits. So, and he's an elder in the community. And so we're getting it right across the board, which is pretty impressive for such, I guess, an early relationship. But we're seeing that meaningful change. And as you say, it will be generational. It will take time.
Yep.
But we've now got an ad. We filmed an ad. We've got an ad that is seen through West Arnhem on every game. So it's going to have around 600 to 700 views. Time slots throughout the season. So just that ongoing messaging and also messaging in language, I think over time we'll see some big changes.
It's very good. Well done, Jared. So good. A little bit of a different topic. There's been a lot of discussion about welcome to countries, but I was wondering if you could talk us through the importance and I guess the history of what a welcome or acknowledgement to country.
It's probably a bit of a sore point, to be honest, Caitlin. It's a bit of a blight on our history, really. These things being welcomed is something that's happened forever. You think about our own homes. Mm-hmm. Someone comes over, we welcome them into our own homes. And so to see all the noise around it and, it's really disappointing when really it's actually a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. What our first people are saying. It's, hey, we welcome everybody. We come in peace. We welcome you to our lands. I think where people get stuck is this notion of country. And when we talk country, we're talking sky country, water country, land. So it's this holistic piece that I think a lot of people get hung up on. We're not talking about, broader Australia because our Australia was broken up into near 350 different clans or tribal groups. And so when we move around Australia, we're moving to another person's home, and so to be welcomed, for me, I think it's a beautiful thing. I just think there's a larger piece of education that just has to keep happening across our country, and we do have the oldest living continuous culture, and it's something that we should all be proud of. And hopefully we can get to that point and walk together as we keep moving forward.
Jared, what about your own professional background? Tell us about how you landed at the Swans. I understand you've got a pretty fascinating story yourself. Tell us about how you landed at the Swans in terms of a professional background and some of the experiences that you've had in high-ranking sport, if you will.
Yep. Probably got to go back to the start. So I go right back to where my nan and pop and where our people originate from. So from a small little town called Bollen in southwest Queensland. So that sits in Guamu country, and they were raised on the Yumba there on the riverbank, and really humble beginnings with just the red earth and it was actually kerosene tins all tied together as a home. So really humble beginnings. Our family have always worked on the land as stock people and stuff. So Dad moved around as Nan and Pop were sourcing work in station hands and cooks in shearing sheds and a range of things. But they landed in Sydney and we were raised out in Western Sydney, schooled out there and everything like that. And my big thing that probably drove me, I'm one of four, got two brothers and a sister, and probably the thing that set me probably apart to my brothers and sisters is sport. I was always passionate about sport, and sport helped me make some, and people within that helped me make some really great decisions. And I want to give a shout out, actually. It's one of our AFLW players, Brenna Tarrant. Her grandma and grandfather were really influential with me growing up, coming and picking me up, and grew up with Brenna's dad. And
I had no idea about this.
And so, they played a massive role in shaping me as a man. And
do you have a special connection with BT as a
BT,
result?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, we're close. I saw her when she was born. I held her in my arms when she was,
Just got goosebumps a little.
First born. So I want to give a shout out to them because, they were massive in my life. And so I went on to uni. I ended up becoming a PE teacher. I taught for 18 years, and then sought another opportunity. Went into higher education at Western Sydney Uni. Spent some time there. Unfortunately, funding ran out for that program. We had some huge success. From that program, it was I worked in Dubbo and Bathurst and Western Sydney, and it was around the wording was really deficit, and I didn't like it because it was saying to raise the aspirations of First Nations kids, but our kids have huge aspirations, and what I did was support them. And so from that program, we ended up with 4 doctors. We've got 3 lawyers, a bunch of teachers, and so it was a small program in 2.5 years that we were able to provide mentorship and support around that helped those young people fulfil their goals. And then all the way along, again, sport has this theme. So I was always coaching cricket in the community, but I was also heavily involved in coaching rugby. And I was fortunate enough, having come through the school's pathways and also with the Lloyd McDermott, which is the National Indigenous Rugby Program, I was able to, grow my skills and reputation. I coached in Shute Shield. We won a premiership at Eastwood, and then I was offered an opportunity to be the assistant coach of the Aussie men's sevens team. And so that saw me travel the world. We had a World Cup in San Francisco. We Commonwealth Games, home Commonwealth Games. We won Sydney, and it was huge. And then post that, the head coach changed. I went into a similar role to what I do now, really, but within rugby, and I set up the First Nations rugby program, which saw me travel something around like 25,000 Ks around the country, and went to over 90 communities, and we chose a national team and were able to tour and play locally but also internationally. And then COVID hit, and unfortunately, like many in sport, I found myself redundant, and I went back into casual teaching. I actually picked up a role also as a delivery driver, and it was funny. I really enjoyed that period of time in my life, actually, and it just gave me some time and some clean air to freshen up. Mm-hmm. And then as I was doing one of my deliveries, I got a call from Damien Raper, who's head of medical services, who was actually my physio when I was head coach of the Philippine national team. And so Damien said, "Hey, Hodge, there's a role over here if you're interested." And
the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Near 5 years later, here we are. So yeah, pretty diverse. I guess I bring a diverse skill set from education to to coaching, high performance, but then also so many years within community, and I try and bring that every day.
You love sport. Who's your favourite First Nations athlete?
Probably hard to go past and I haven't had too much to do with her, but Kathy Freeman, Sydney 2000, I was 20 odd, and what Kathy did leading into that, and then to handle all that pressure and to win that medal and unite our country. It was a really inspiring evening. I think everyone at that time can recall where they were. So I think Kathy's been amazing from a pure talent. It's hard to go past the Mundine family. I think Uncle Tony Mundine had 96 professional fights and won 65 by knockout. He's the only Australian to hold 4 belts, 4 Australian titles across 4 different divisions. And then obviously his son Anthony forged his own career. And so, pretty talented family there, pretty incredible. And then you move into the footy ranks, and there's just so many, and Goodsy and Mick here and Bud lead the way there. But Lewis Jetta, he was incredible.
So how do we get more Goodsies and Mickey O's and Buds and Lewis Jetta? I know you've got a significant role with the First Nations Academy. Just tell us about the initiative there and how we get more Indigenous talent to the top level.
Yep. AFL is unique in our country in terms of its system. So the draft, it's the only sport in our country. We know overseas it happens and works. The draft is very unique here in our country. So, we have our zone and ours via our academy obviously goes up the east coast of Australia, up to Coffs Harbour, down to Shell Harbour. In New South Wales, it's changing and it's changed a lot, but AFL still, I guess it's not first chosen sport by many, as opposed to some of our other footy codes. As I say, that's changing. When I grew up, you couldn't see the 4 sticks on any field. In fact, out west, I remember the council put them up, and 4 times they were ripped down. It was a real turf war. But thankfully, we're seeing that change, and I guess my role is to provide our kids with choice. So that's why we set up an opportunity. That's why we set up the First Nations Academy. When I first started, there was only 7 players out of 700 in our QBE Swans Academy who identified, and I knew. And I just know there's so much more out there. It was just providing a safe access and opportunity for our kids. We've been able to do that over 3 years. We've seen year-on-year growth from 150 to 200 to 250 this year. It's a program based with its foundation around mental health, which is obviously topical with the news over the weekend. And I just want to pass on my condolences to the Selwood family. I don't know the family, but there's plenty within our club, and obviously our head coach having played with both boys. So just, we know mental health is important, and again, unfortunately for our First Nations people and for our youth, we have the highest incidences of youth suicide in Australia. So this program plays a huge role in hopefully changing some of those statistics, and we use footy as the vehicle. So it's a big job. We've got 5 hubs up there at Coffs Harbour, Port Macquarie and Kempsey, Central Coast, Sydney and Shell Harbour. It's a big job, but our communities are really leading the way. The community coaches at each hub are the real heroes and leaders of our program, because they have that constant contact with our kids. And so they're doing an amazing job. And now, as a result of all that work, we've got just on 90 First Nations players in our mainstream academy. So, long story short, Chatty, what we've got to do, we've got to grow our own. That's the bottom line. I think the last 3 years, the draft numbers of First Nations players has dropped significantly. 3 years ago, I think it's gone 4, then 3 players, then only 3 players last year. And the numbers don't look great again this year. So from a national perspective, we're seeing at the elite level, we're seeing our numbers drop, but we're really changing that because we're seeing our numbers grow. And so it's going to take time. I think in the next 5 years, we'll have 3 First Nations players drafted from our academy. In fact, we had 2 girls in the under-16s be acknowledged this year, and 1 made the Australian merit team. So the talent is there. We've just got to keep nurturing it.
Very good. I get the honour of maybe the last question, but how good is our Indigenous Guernsey this year?
Jordan.
Yeah.
Jordan
smashed it.
She did an amazing job.
It does look good. I think it's my
So
favourite
good.
out of all of them.
Yeah, she did an amazing job, and the story of connecting her community as a Bidjigal artist, connecting the Laparoos community and the Buri the whale story with our club is pretty powerful, and she's acknowledged all, her ancestors, but our past players, our past staff who have been on this journey for over 150 years, and our move from South Melbourne to Sydney, to depict all of that history and rich history on one jumper is pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jared, as we mentioned off the top, Sir Doug Nichols' fortnight in the AFL is always a fantastic period and one to celebrate our First Nations community. Thanks for coming on and enjoy the game against the D's this Sunday.
Hopefully we get another win back-to-back. We've actually got a tremendous Sir Doug Nichols record. I don't think in my time here, we haven't actually lost a game.
Touch
So
wood. Touch
so
wood,
I'm
Jared.
asking,
That's a jinx if I've ever seen
I'm
it.
asking our club if we could have Marn Grook
Every week.
all every
24
week,
rounds.
and we'll be having flag after flag.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate your time.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Hannah. Thanks,
Jared.
Jodie.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Lee, and Bingley is proud to be a sponsor of the More Than Footy podcast. Before I get bounced by Dad, don't miss our weekly Binger deals on now at Bingley. Go the Swannies!
Good one, Jasmine.
Thanks, Nana.